Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
Marianne, this is a topic I love. This is what talks about getting the adrenaline and the creative juices flowing, is this time management and organization. I am the absolute nerd, okay, when it comes to these areas. And I remember a long time ago, early in my life, I had a mentor who got me started with a day runner system. Do you recognize that term?
I do.
Some people recognize this, the Covey or, binders. Well, Day Runner was its own. And I had the little leather binder, the small one that's the size of a hymn book or a Bible, if you would. I had everything, and I had all my receipts. I had my contact list. I mean, and I was smart enough to know I would write in my contacts in pencil so I could erase and change as people moved. I didn't write in pen. Okay. I had my calendars, and I filed my calendars at the end of every year. I had my to-do lists in that binder. But boy, have I changed. I mean, I can tell you the year I stopped using that Day Runner was the day that Handspring released the Palm Pilot.
Oh, wow.
Does that date me or what?
No, we had a Palm Pilot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pre-Apple days. Apple did not have devices back then. I was an early adopter. But I have moved through, since then, I've moved through so many different to-do list systems. What's your system? What's Chad's system? I want to know, how do you guys organize your to-do list and your time management?
Oh, I love that you asked this question. So rather than the negative connotation of nerd, I would say that Chad and you probably land on the same side of things, and we'll call you guys Jedis. Okay.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Okay. You are a time management Jedi. How about that?
I will wear that badge honorably. Yes. And proudly.
So this is a place of contention in our marriage and home because he is 100% digital. He manages his time. He is very list oriented. He is an Enneagram 1. So that's important for him. He has a very big job.
Yeah.
So he's managing lots of to-dos, lots of high level things. And he's digital in every capacity. And I think the man has used every single invented option, lists, Google lists, Basecamp, Slack. I mean, I could go on and on and on with all the digital things. And he keeps begging me to do his system. Okay. Women out there. Okay. And maybe it's not a men thing. Maybe it's a personality thing, but I buy the beautiful Amazon planner. Okay. Yeah. And it's the planner that I write in, because for my brain, when you write it one time, it's like saying it 7. And so I need to write it. There's something odd about writing in my calendar, and that helps me remember it. So I'm one of those old school girls that hasn't gone digital. And when I write it and I stay on top of my calendar and my lists, like I told you guys all know my favorite thing is Post-it notes. A lot of lists are around my home with Post-it notes. Yes. So I'm a little old school in my time management.
Yeah. Well, to this day, I've gone through all the digitals. I've downloaded a number of apps and, all these others. However, here's where I've landed is I'm kind of in that hybrid of where you are. I'm a big believer that if you write it, it helps it. And I'm a big fan of rewriting your to-do list every day. And that's the system I practiced over and over for many, many years. However, because of working with an administrative assistant, a handwritten system is not as effective as a digital system. And so we actually, my assistant who organizes my world, I think the world of her name is Melissa, and I could not function without her in my professional everyday life. But we use the simple system of the notes on your phone. And every phone, whether you're Android or Apple, you have a note system. What most people don't know is that you can share that note. I shared a to-do list with her years ago, and at the top of the list are my items to do, and at the bottom are her items. She can actually add to that list for things I need to do. So like when she has proxy to my email, which means she can read and send from my own email account. And she has access to everything in my world. And so as people send things in, she'll put things on my calendar. She'll put it on my to-do list. She'll go in and look at it. And then I put things on her to-do list and we mark them off accordingly. And I look at it every single day, all day long. By the way, that same note system is how my wife and I do our grocery list. We have a shared note and she can put something on there. I get an alert and it tells me, hey, I need to stop by the store on the way home from the office and grab something. And so that's the system that I've been operating on for to-dos. Now, everything else is certainly in an organized digital calendar system and everything else. But here's the thing I think that it is most important for you is, number one, you need your own system. Yeah. It doesn't need to be Mary Ann's system. It doesn't need to be Ron's system. It really, I didn't hear Rachel advocate for a system. She just is talking about principles that keeps us moving forward and productive about our time. And oh man, to hear her talk about redeeming time. We've had this conversation before. I am not a TV watcher. It's not that I'm against TV. I would just rather invest, and I've never thought about it in the terms that she says, but I'd rather invest my time in a different way. So with that, I want us to just step back. Let's let Rachel teach us. And I'm going to warn you, when they come back from the break, I want you to just fast forward until Mary Ann and I can talk about the debrief, because you don't need to hear the part that I'm so guilty of and burdened for, that I just felt convicted. And I'm like, Rachel, I liked you up until this point and I did not like you. I'll let you deal with that. And then we'll see you on the other side.
Are you concerned about your church's future? Will it serve another generation? The Bible says He is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and yet we often only know how to connect to Abraham. Let D6 help you connect with each generation. Your kids and grandkids are counting on you. D6 comes from the principles of Deuteronomy 6 and helps what happens in church also happen at home. Curriculum you can trust. Discipleship that connects.
Rachel Price is an international conference speaker, author, ministry leader, and consultant. She is passionate about empowering and equipping leaders to fulfill the calling God has placed on their lives. During her 10 years in ministry, Rachel has hosted radio programs, appeared on national television, and traveled internationally, sharing her passion for the Lord. However, her favorite calling is that of wife and mother of 2 kids. Rachel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're talking about a topic it's important to me, so I'm just going to sit here and learn from you because I'm really bad at it, and that's time management. It is one of my weaknesses, and I think it's probably a weakness for a lot of people who are in ministry, business, whatever. So really, I'm just here for your wealth of knowledge because I need this. When it comes to ministry specifically, we always hear there will never be enough time to do everything. And unless you're Wonder Woman, it's going to be tough to really just knock it all out. On the other side of things, sometimes we fail to do as much as we should be doing. It's kind of one of two extremes. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people making when it comes to time management?
So I do think that you're right. Unless you're Wonder Woman, you can't do it all. But no, none of us can. None of us can do all of it. And the biggest thing that I think is people try one of two things. They either try too hard to do all of it and they just compile too much and then they get overwhelmed. And they're just like, I just can't do it. And then they just stop. And so that's one side of it. Or the other side is there's just a lack of intentionality. And people aren't very specific with how they're spending their time, and they just let the time go. And I relate time and money a lot. You know, they say time is money. Obviously, it's not money, but it is related in that we do need to be careful how we invest our time and how we spend our time. Unlike with money, we don't get our time back.
Yeah.
So if we're not very careful how we spend it, it's just gone, and there's no second chance at it. So I think one of the biggest mistakes I see is just that lack of intentionality in how we're spending and investing our time.
Well, you've developed the 5 Ps of time management. Can you share those with us?
I would love to. And, you know, I think we come to these conferences a lot and we hear, I'm going to tell you how it starts. The first one, obviously, is prayer. And I always preface it with, you know, we're at a Christian conference, so everybody expects, oh, well, of course it's prayer. You know, everybody says you got to pray. But it's so vital. It is so important. And it really is. My thought is God has plans for our lives. He knows every step before we take it. He knows when we sit down and when we stand up. So if that's the case, and he knows the plans he has for us, why would we not want to know those plans as well? Just because something's on our to-do list doesn't mean it's on God's to-do list for us. So my first step is always that we pray first. Pray and ask God for his wisdom, his plans, and that our to-do list would align with what he has planned for us in that day. So the first P is prayer, and starting with that. And then we go into planning. Okay, once we feel like we know God's direction and his vision, is we go into the planning step. And I plan my time in portions. Okay, we start with the big picture in mind and work backwards. You know, for instance, if I know I've got a birthday party to go to at 5 o'clock in the evening, but it's going to take an hour to get there, so I know I have to leave by 4, but it's going to take an hour to get ready, so I need to be ready by 3 o'clock. You know, I just work backwards so I know. And we do that with everything, whether it's planning a big event or planning something as simple as getting ready for your day. Start with the end in mind, plan in portions, and work backwards. Are kind of my steps. So then the third thing that we go into, the third P, is priorities. And understanding what your priorities are as you're looking over your list. These are the things that absolutely have to happen today. These are my top priorities. Identify what those are. And sometimes we look at the list and it feels like, well, all of these are priorities. I have to do all of them, so how do I pick just 3? But pick at least your 3 top priorities, and then identify the things that are not priorities. What are things that can wait until another day? And I think one of the biggest things we've got to do with that is making sure that we save those another day items and actually mark them on another day. Otherwise, they fall off our list, we forget about them, and we never come back and get them done.
Yeah.
So go in your calendar and mark out next Tuesday. I know this can wait till next Tuesday, so I'm going to write it down on next Tuesday so it gets done. So that's part of the priorities. The fourth P is productivity. And just making sure that we're most productive with our time. And I think time management is a lot less about it's a lot less about just actually manipulating our time than it is about building people around us and helping to delegate and including other people in that vision. Because if we can include other people, then we don't have to worry as much about making sure there's enough time, because we can have other people buy in and they're pitching in their time, and suddenly we see we have a wealth of that resource.
Yeah.
So delegating and including other people helps us in our productivity. And then the final one is our purpose. So within our purpose, when we decide, here's what I'm working for, this is what this is going to do, and we get passionate about that purpose, then that passion is going to get other people saying, I want to be involved in this. How can I help? How can I pitch in? And then when they get passionate about it and they see the purpose, then they're going to be more productive. And so when we can surround ourselves by productive people, we're going to find that we're getting a lot more things done in a lot less time, because we have more people adding their time in as well.
That's really good stuff. All 5 of those really good for us to remember. Now, can we have a little bit of a therapy session here just for a second?
Let's go for
listeners, you can just, tune out, whatever, because none of you deal with this at all, I'm sure. One of my downfalls is that after a long day, I'm tired, I'm stressed. Sometimes I just want to turn on the TV and I just want to mindlessly scroll through my phone. Before I know it, I look up and 3 hours has passed and I've done absolutely nothing productive other than update Twitter about 47 times. What advice can you offer to someone like me who has a tendency to just waste away those evening hours?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say that part of it is that is okay. There's nothing wrong with, I want an hour to myself to mindlessly scroll through social media and watch TV. And that's okay. But you're right. There comes a point when we look up and we realize that I lost my entire evening and I did absolutely nothing worth any value whatsoever. And so there's a couple different ways you could go about that. One thing is I just tell people is set an alarm and just know, it's gonna require discipline. But if you set an alarm and say, when this alarm goes off, I absolutely have to turn off the TV or put my phone down, and I have to get up and do something. But the second piece to that, and this is very important, is having a set activity you're going to do. Because if you just have an alarm go off and you're like, okay, I gotta turn off the TV, but now what? Right? Then you're like, well, I don't have anything else to do. Let me just keep watching TV. So if we can set an alarm, but know what I'm going to do next. Okay, I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to spend 1 hour writing, or I'm going to go on a bike ride. Whatever it is, just know that you have something else there to do, and it helps hold you accountable. And for some people, they're like, okay, that's great, but I can't make myself get up and do it, no matter how many alarms I set. And so in that case, sometimes it just requires just completely uninstalling an app. Maybe, you're finding yourself like, oh, it's been 2 hours and all I've done is watch TikTok videos for 2 hours. So I laughed a lot, but I have nothing else to show for my time. So maybe it comes down to uninstalling that app for a time and just realizing that this honestly is something that I'm struggling with and I have to break away from this. So I'm going to take this away for a time. There are apps you can use on your phone where you can set time limits and it makes it turn the app off, but those are also easily overridden. You just enter your code and it lets you have more time. So just finding whatever works for you as far as discipline goes, and either setting an alarm, knowing you're doing something else and going on to that, or completely removing that for a time until you can find yourself in a place where it's easier to break away from that.
Well, I love that idea of having a plan in place of what you're going to do. Literally this morning, I was so lazy that I did not go to the gym in this hotel because it was too far of a walk, which is like the epitome of laziness. But having that idea and plan of knowing what you're going to do ahead of time, I think really that's helpful for me. Listeners, I hope that's helpful for you too, if you're dealing with the same thing, because I think that can solve a lot of problems right there. Now, Rachel, a lot of ministers and even parents are workaholics because there's just so much to do. We can't get everything done, and there's just an infinite amount of things to do. Because of that, rest often gets neglected. What is the relationship between rest and time management?
Well, I feel this is something that I feel very strongly about, because you're right. And for me, as a person who's a doer, I feel like I always have to be doing something. And I think even in the culture we live in right now, it's almost we're to the point where people are comparing, oh, well, I'm more busy. Oh, no way. I'm the busiest. I have all of this going on. And it's a big deal to be busy. And so I've learned the hard way that we absolutely have to take time to rest. And so one thing I teach often is that you need to schedule that time. Actually mark it down in your calendar. Even if it's just 1 hour a week, you go in and you actually schedule it on your calendar, and you make it as important as any other meeting that you would not cancel. You have to realize the importance of it. And you mark it down so when someone does come to you and say, hey, can I have you for an hour on Friday? Ooh, I would love to help you, but I already have something on the calendar. Can we get something else scheduled? And I know it sounds ridiculous, and people are like, well, no, I need to be there. You do, but you can't be there for them at your best capacity if you're not rested. So you have to put value on that time and make it a priority to make that happen.
Yeah, that's really good. I know the one thing I hear from people that they say, I know that's important, but I feel guilty about that. Like, I feel guilty for just laying on the couch, for sitting down and doing nothing. I feel guilty for reading a book when I could be painting my deck.
Absolutely.
How do people deal with that guilt? I mean, that can't be healthy, but it's a reality. How do we deal with that guilt when it hits us? It's like, hey, no, you shouldn't be resting. You need to get up and do something.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely relate. That is a guilt that I have felt often, and even sometimes I still find myself in that place where I find myself coming back and having to say, no, I absolutely have to take this rest. And I think the way that really it has set in with me, where I've learned to do that, is I've seen the effects of when I don't take that rest. And I keep thinking, no, I've got to be Wonder Woman. I've got to go. I have to do, and I cannot stop. And then I do that so long that finally I get to a place where I'm worth nothing. And so all of these people that I'm reaching out and helping are getting not even my bare minimum, because I'm so not worth anything because I've not had the rest. I've not been refreshed. And so I know that when I'm helping people and I'm pouring into people, I want to give them my best. And in all of the projects I work on, I want it to be my 100%. And I can't do that if I'm not rested and if I'm not refreshed. And so whether that means, even if it's just, 1 hour a week that I'm just sitting down and just I'm going away, I'm reading my Bible somewhere quiet, I'm going shopping, whatever it takes to refresh, and I'm getting away, I have to make that a priority because I have to be at my best. And I've come to see that I can't be at my best when I don't do that. And so I think that's what pushes me to continue to do that, even though I do often feel guilty, like, oh, I could be doing so many other things. Yeah.
Well, that's why I skipped the gym this morning. I feel better now because I had to be my best for this, and I knew I couldn't be if I was exhausted. So thank you for making me feel better about that.
Anytime.
Listeners, stop judging me. As we close, what is the one big takeaway you want people to remember when it comes to time management?
I would say just to be intentional with it, to invest your time wisely. I hear so many people talk about money and investing your money wisely and building a savings. And I think all of that stuff is so important. I think I'm a big proponent of all of that. But equally so, and actually more importantly so, we need to be careful how we're investing and spending our time. Because unlike with money, you can't make more time. You'll never get your time back. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. We get a set number of seconds on this earth to do exactly what God called us to do. And so we never get to go back and redo the seconds we've lost. So we need to make sure that we're taking every second we can, investing it wisely, and using it for what God has put us here to do.
Well, Rachel, I appreciate you sharing this with us and letting us know that we don't have to be a superhero to make this work, and we don't have to move at the speed of light to get everything done. It really is just about being intentional in what we do. Thank you for sharing this, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Okay, Marianne, did you see what I was talking about Rachel that I felt so convicted over? Or should I just spill the beans here?
I think I know, but I want to see. Why don't you just say it?
Yeah, I know. It's planning for rest and getting the right amount of sleep. I've always said you can sleep when you die. And the idea of getting 8 hours of sleep every night, I love sleep, by the way. I love it. But in my regular routine of my work days, I will work until 12 or 1 on some personal project, or I think many of you out there know that, it's not unusual that you may get an email from me at, 12 a.m. or 12:30. But it's not just work. I'm not like a workaholic, even though I am a workaholic. I teach, and I get a chance to teach classes at 2 different universities. So I do my classwork at night. I love to write and do other projects. I do my writing at night. And so I love that time in there. And the idea of carving out enough sleep time has always been a challenge for me. But on my days off, I will sleep until 10. And, in the morning, I'll get a much longer period of sleep in there, but boy, I just don't do that well. What about you? Do you thrive with sleep? Do you skip out on it? I have no idea.
Oh my goodness. Oh man. This body demands rest. And I'll be honest with you, Ron, this has been an area that the Lord's been cultivating in me for a little bit. You guys, most of you know my story. I got really sick a few years ago, and it rocked my world. And it was one of the ways that God kind of interrupted and said, your body gives you cues. And, one of the big takeaways that I got from this, and it was extremely convicting and sanctifying, to be honest with you, is that He commands rest. Yeah. And it's arrogant of us to not honor Him there. And, we've got to be careful with our time. And I say this to my students a lot. This is something that I'm passionate about right now. This time management concept, Ron, is discipline.
Yeah.
It requires discipline from us, and we don't recline into discipline. Yeah. I have a new recliner that's electric, and I'm used to having the one that's old school that you just open up real quick and you can close it really quick. So we have these electric recliners, and they're super annoying. They're great, but they're annoying because I actually have to wait for it to recline. And then when I'm in the recline position, when someone shows up at my door, I've got to wait to close it to go answer the door. Okay. And so the way that works with discipline is that we can't stay in the reclined position as ministry leaders, as Christians, as parents. We can't recline into leading. We can't recline into discipline. We've got to be active and we've got to be disciplined. There's a choice on our part. And so I just want to challenge everybody. I walked away very challenged. I'd want to challenge ministry leaders and moms and dads. What is your life looking like? What is your schedule looking like? And are you practicing those P's that she challenged us with?
Those 5 P's are good.
So good. So good. Yes.
Something that convicted me, and by the way, if you listeners didn't catch it, Marianne just called me arrogant. She said, for me to ignore rest and God's command, it's arrogant for us. So, but my counter, I push back in jest is,
okay.
God said he worked for 7 days. He rests on the 7th. I rest on my day off, but those 6 days in between, I'm not getting but 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and I'm good with that, but probably not good. Who knows? I'm hearing and reading stories that saying that people who don't rest well, it's contributing to dementia. And when one gets older, that's what the current science is beginning to say. I'm not sure I can go back and correct that at this point at the stage I'm in. But here's the convicting phrase I heard a long time ago, and Rachel so reminded us of it. It doesn't matter if you're Bill Gates or you're the president of the United States, or if you're Marianne or Ron, we all have the same number of hours in a day. What are we doing with those hours? How are we, she used the terms spending and investing.
Yeah.
If we're going to recline, we're spending it. If we're going to watch TV, we're spending it. She didn't say it in those terms, but we can get out there on our apps and waste away, spend. But where are we investing? What are we putting back? And that comes in the form of reading a book or writing a book or writing in a journal or spending time in the Word, spending time in prayer, connecting with your kiddos, connecting with your spouse. Where is the intentional investment of putting coins and dollars into our bank of life in our time management? That is such a great picture that Rachel has challenged us with, and I'm thankful for that.
Yes. She said a statement that really challenged me towards the end. My best is compromised when I'm not rested. And Ron, I just want to encourage you. I think we all have to be careful how we define rest.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it always necessarily means nap. I think rest is a posture of the heart and the mind.
Yeah.
And so if you working on, I know you like to work in your shop on wood projects and, have that creative outlet. That's important for you to have that. Similarly, I quilt. You guys know that about me. I like to quilt. That's my creative outlet. I like to read. I think we just have to be really intentional about our rest. She challenged us to schedule rest, but be mindful, friends. Don't put so many parameters around how you're defining rest. That really has a lot to do with your mind and your heart. And rest is really like a quiet hope.
Yeah.
And that's a peaceful place. I mean, scripture is really clear about perfect peace and how he keeps us in perfect peace, him whose mind is stayed on him. And so I think that find creative ways to rest. That doesn't necessarily mean under the weighted blanket for a nap.
I love it. I call those lane changers. When I come home, there's times I've got to just unplug from whatever is occupying the rent space of my mind and change lanes. And you're right. Sometimes it's getting out in the wood shop. Sometimes it's crawling on the big mower and just going and mowing. And I usually listen to a podcast while I'm doing that, or a book on in audio form. But I find that diversion, and we've had to be super creative with it in the times we've been shut in. But hopefully you've created some new hobbies, some new lanes to jump in and explore along the way. And if that's the case, I'm doing pretty well, because I've got some wonderful opportunities to change some lanes. So take inventory in your life. See what you're doing intentionally on your time management. See what you're doing to change lanes to alternative forms of rest, as Marianne has just talked through. And then the intentionality of your discipline.
Yes.
You've got to push away. Whether you, as Rachel said, set a timer. And at the end of it, have an intentional something you're going to go do. I think that is a true word of direction for our lives. Yeah. I'm appreciative for her, and I look forward to Mike Trimble, who's going to be our guest next week. And he's going to talk about how do you love on volunteers. We all have them in our ministry.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how small or how big your church is. Our church's backbone are volunteers, not staff, not the lead pastor. It's the volunteers. And he's going to give us such simple insights on how we can love on them in some very creative ways. Until then, look for opportunities to connect to your kiddo's heart and the people who God has put around you. And make sure that you're stepping into the moment of everyday discipleship. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.